Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to the Meristem Weekly Inner Practice for Self-Development. As a reminder, we do this to help grow ourselves, which in turn shifts the environment, which hopefully leads to a greater change for the people around us. And so welcome. If you need a little bit deeper dive, link the kind of introduction video. I go into more depth of what this practice is. But here's the practice for this week. So as you remember, we have a concept, a practice, and a value. And last week we worked with movement. The meaning we were working with around movement is anytime you make a postural change, anytime you have an emotional shift, anytime you have a new thought or, move a thought from one idea to another, movement has occurred. This week we're going to take that definition and explore it a little bit more. So when I say posture, I can really drill that home to the physical body. And if you watch the intro video, we talked a lot about these three steps being associated with my body. So the thinking aspect kind of innervates from the head into the rest of my body. The feeling aspect from my cardiovascular system, my heart, into the rest of my body. And the values, kind of how I show up, what I do metabolically. And these are aspects of your body that you can engage in each of these practices. That being said, movement can be not just the body. And we'd like to explore this week, what is the thing that informs the body? Is it from an internal stimuli or from an external stimuli? What builds the posture that we have? So for example, we would each say we have a personal space. If somebody walks into my personal space, sometimes I feel it, sometimes I don't. From a movement standpoint, you might ask, is my personal space maybe smaller or bigger based on when I feel somebody in my space? Maybe somebody comes into my home. I live throughout my entire house, and the moment somebody walks through the door, even though I'm upstairs, I feel them in my house. So from a movement concept, this week, we want to explore what's outer movement, the movement that happens around me, that comes towards me, that goes away from me. What's inner movement? If I say everything underneath my skin, inside of me, what's going on? What's that movement that's occurring? And then how do those two interact with each other? Outer movement and inner movement. And what happens to the body as a result of those movements? So just as a quick reference point, there's simple ways to explore and track this for yourself. So you notice when something moves up, like I'm now feeling like I'm in my head, or I feel my feet on the ground. You might notice I come up into my head and I can have a higher voice. I can go down to my feet and have a lower voice. There's a change there when I engage in different parts of my body. So up, down are movements. Right to left or side to side, however is easiest for you to think about it, and in, coming in, and going out. Somebody said something that I took to heart. That's a phrase, right? But I took it in. It came all the way into my internal self, and I worked with it. Or I brushed it off. Somebody said something, and I didn't let it come inside myself. So these are concepts that we want to explore from a movement standpoint, using these 6 movements. You could say there's a 7th one of stillness in the middle, but look at those 6. And so the practice for this week is communication. We know with communication can be verbal, gestural. It comes in a lot of different forms. It can be a high five, a touch. Communication we're working with all types of communication. And so this week, the practice is, how do you receive or deliver the message? From the results, what worked inwardly and outwardly in your movement. So let's say I delivered, a nice hello, and somebody was like, wow, that felt really good, and had an enthusiastic response back to me. I could say, hey, what was my body? How was I like present or awake or moving outwardly and inwardly that really made the connection with that person. Maybe I say, hi, how's it going? And I get no response. I can look at, maybe I had a hunch gesture, maybe I was kind of more internally focused and externally focused. And the person who I tried to communicate with felt that and was like, well, that's not necessarily something that I want to receive, or there's not really, are you talking to me? Maybe is the question that comes up from them. So the practice this week is to look at the messages and how you're communicating and notice through that communication and the results of the communication what your outward posture and what your inner posture is and how your body is kind of responding to those two movements. The value, how we want to show up, I want to learn individual potential. So, you could say, I like to say sometimes that my potential is based on the amount of curiosity or wonder that I can bring into the world. The more, think I know it, or, I think I've learned everything that I can about something, the more you limit yourself. So I think to me, your individual potential at some level can be based on how curious you are. So that the value that you're bringing is being curious, is how do I want to learn? How do I engage wanting to learn something? And in this case, we're putting I want to learn through the lens of movement. Get curious about how you move inwardly and outwardly. How does it feel living in and around your body based on the direction of movement? So again, coming back, like when I sit in front of the computer, do I find myself being up in my head? When I go for a walk, or do I go out in nature, do I find myself still in my head, or do I find myself more in my body? If I'm having an energized, friendly conversation, do I find myself more out and present with people? If I find myself in an uncomfortable situation, do I find myself more inward and less outward? Notice these movements and how your body is responding to the situation outwardly or inwardly that's coming towards you. So just to recap, concept, continuing to work with movement from an inner and outer perspective, and how the body is kind of the median between those two movements. Practice, communication, how my body and the inner and outer movements are reflecting how I communicate or how my message is being received. And the value, get curious about yourself and how you're moving, both inwardly and outwardly, and see how much you can learn about yourself and others through that lens. So thanks for joining. Hope you'll join us in our practice this week. And as we say at Meristem, let's go forward and awaken the possible.